Lisa. Welcome, Ruth. Hello, Adam.
Good evening, everyone. We're just going to start welcoming everybody who's signed up. That will take us a few minutes. So in the meantime, please do start using the chat function to introduce yourself, who you're representing, which organisation or business you're representing tonight, and also your expectations for the evening as well, please. We will ask you to remain on mute just as we get everybody in and for the duration of the panel discussion. But please feel free to use the chat.
Please do put your webcams on as well. Don't be shy. It'd be nice to see everyone's faces.
I will just try and get my name in there as well. You'll see myself, Kerry and James. We're going to be helping you navigate this evening as well, make sure that everything runs smoothly. So please, any questions about kind of the logistics side of it, just let us know. You'll meet the panel shortly, and throughout the session as well, you'll find Exeter City Futures team also present, and some supporters of the event as well are helping us facilitate this evening. For those of you just joining us, please remain on mute, please, as you come into the room, but please do feel free just to add your name and your organisation you're representing this evening and your expectations into the chat.
And just a reminder for everybody this evening that we are recording the session. So if you, hopefully that's okay with everybody. I think you've all signed on Eventbrite that you are willing to be recorded.
Just another that there are journalists and people kind of making notes as well, just so everyone's aware.
I just flag up that I have to go and vote in Parliament, so we'll be back shortly.
No problem, Simon.
As Kerry's just mentioned, we are recording this evening. We'll be recording all of the discussion. What takes place as well in the chat is also recorded. Just so you know, you can message people privately, but when we record the chat, when we download it at the end, we get to see all the discussion that took place. So just please be mindful of that.
Hi Alex, we've got Alex Thorne, how are you doing? Jill Westcott.
Okay, sorry. Thanks for bearing with us. It does take a little minute just for us to get everyone in. For those of you just joining us, please do add your name into the chat. Let us know where you're from and what you're expecting from this evening. We are recording the event, both the verbal discussion and what takes place in the chat.
My room is about to go very dark. I think a thunderstorm is about to hit where I am.
We were just saying that there was a meeting that Rosie and I were in earlier. Rosie Bates, where was she? Oh yes, hi Rosie, who looks after the skills at Exeter City Council, and the thunderstorm that went over did interrupt some people's connections to the meeting. So just to make you aware. How are we doing on numbers, Kerry? Is most people come in now?
We
Lovely.
could probably make a start, I think. We might get a few extra people joining.
Yeah, I'll let them in as we go, Linda.
Lovely, thank you. Well, thanks very much. First thing to say is thank you very, very much for everyone for joining us this evening. I appreciate it's 6 o'clock, probably after a long, long day, and possibly a long day of being in front of screens already, and back-to-back meetings and so forth. So we really do appreciate your time. Bear in mind, if I stumble over my words, I do apologise, because I think all I've done today is talk and type. So I will get my brain in gear, but it might be a bit fuzzy for a second. Just to cover off, just really quickly again, just kind of the housekeeping. For those that are just joining us, well, you might have missed, we are recording the event. I know we've said this several times already, but just to make sure that the verbal discussion throughout the panel, throughout the round table discussion as well, when you break out into group discussions, is recorded, as is all the content in the chats as well. And you'll know, if you're familiar with Zoom, that you can message people privately, but please be aware that when we download the chat at the end, we also see all of those conversations too. We know we've got a good mix in the room tonight, or throughout you all. So thank you very, very much for showing your interest in this. It's entitled the Emergency Roundtable, Retail in a Post-COVID City. So we know it's attracted people who are retailers, people who work and support the retail sector, and those with a vision for retail in Exeter as well, which is great, and it means that we've got a really good mix of voices. Can we make sure as well, with the view that we will use this discussion in the reports and the discussion that we download from the chat as well. We will use that in our reports to the city, to councils, we'll feed it back to all the facilitators and panel here, which includes the Federation of Small Businesses, Exeter Chamber of Commerce, the Business Improvement District, and so on. And we hope it'll be a great and interesting chat. But please do bear in mind, we're going to encourage obviously sensible dialogue. We want some great collaborative thinking to come out of this evening, and look forward to some constructive contributions. So thank you very much. Just to explain to you what to expect tonight, the session is being hosted by Exeter City Futures, and Exeter City Futures has been around for 4 years. Most recently, we've curated the Net Zero Exeter plan, looking at reducing carbon in the city and becoming a net zero city by 2030. That was delivered back in April. This evening, we're delighted to be able to host this event, this Emergency Roundtable for Retail in Exeter. We will head up the event with a panel discussion. We've got a great panel lined up who will help paint the picture of what retail looks like at the moment, and what it will possibly look like in the city, particularly in the face of the changing role of the city at the moment that we're all becoming more and more accustomed to. That will be followed, or they'll be followed by a roundtable discussion, where we will move all of you into breakout rooms. At that point, it will be a little, you might just have to give us a few minutes, because Zoom automatically allocates you into breakout rooms. So just be aware that we will want a facilitator in each room. So we will need just to make sure that happens. We have to do that manually. So please bear with us at that point. And at the end, by the end of the session, or by the end of this evening, we hope to finish at 8 o'clock. And by the end of that session, we would very much like to get to a point where we've been able to reflect on the state, the role of the city as it is now and in the future. Give you an opportunity as well to look at takeaways for your own businesses and your organisations, and also hit the ambitious target of being able to identify some initiatives that we would like the city to explore further off the back of this, that will enable the retail or retailers in Exeter to thrive. That is rather ambitious. But what we will do with that information then is that the recommendations for initiatives that are taken forward, we will ask you to vote on the top ones that come out of the roundtables, and we will put those initiatives plus any others that we find through mining the conversations that take place today into a document which we will circulate to everyone here after the event, and ask you to put your names to those that you would be most interested in either committing to taking forward or helping us explore further. So I'm hoping then we will start to show how we can all collaborate together as a city in order to help the city fulfill its goals in being a vibrant and healthy and happy place to live and work. Before I introduce the panel, I would very much like to introduce Andrew Hardwick to you. Andrew Hardwick will feature on our panel tonight. I don't know whether you've been able to look through all of the panel members that are joining us. Andrew is the former regional sales director regional stores director, Andrew, you'll correct me now, for Tesco. And this week, we're delighted as well to welcome him as the managing director for Exeter City Futures. So please be gentle with him, folks. He's literally been in post since Monday. We've given him a whistle-stop tour of Exeter, Exeter City Futures, and what we're hoping to get out of tonight. But please welcome him warmly. I've asked him to just give a few words really on what this evening is all about and what we hope to get out of it. So over to you, Andrew, and very, very welcome to Exeter City Futures.
Thank you, Linda, and hello everyone. Great to be here and to obviously meet you all. So as Linda said, I'm Andrew. I'm the new MD at Exeter City Futures. Still very much trying to acclimatise. I'm at the end of, or towards the end of day 3. And for me, personally speaking, it's felt genuinely really, really seamless thus far. Probably in no small part down to the sort of brilliant people who have given me a very warm welcome and been very, very patient as I've asked 1,000,001 questions and probably a few stupid ones in amongst it, to be honest. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say hi and introduce myself and sort of express really how excited I am about working with you all, not only now, but in the sort of weeks and months and hopefully years ahead as we collaborate and move forward to really try and mobilise the vision for the city that links both the net zero Exeter plan, but also for clean and inclusive growth across the city. And those two sort of strategies and visions link entirely to what we're trying to discuss tonight and do now as we restart and begin to recover off the back of COVID, in trying to ensure that, you know, the city and the retailers that operate within it continue to create an environment that's, you know, great to live in, great to work in, and ultimately great to do business in. When I knew this event was on day 3, it did initially, you know, cause a little bit of trepidation in me, but that very, very quickly got quelled by a couple of things. First, I thought, well, it's a great opportunity to say hello and sort of introduce myself. And then secondly, realising it was about retail helped also. So my previous 10-year career has been in retail. I've been a retailer or food retailer for a decade, and obviously have left that to join ECF. So from my view, I think tonight's really about us discussing and trying to identify the changing face of retail within Exeter. Obviously now as we recover, but also what that looks like in the future in terms of trends for all retailers. And, you know, that retailer mix is an eclectic one. You've got bricks and mortar, there's obviously online retailers, lots of sort of different goods you can buy, whether it's car, furniture, clothing, food, health and beauty, books, art, or those that actually sell services. So it's how do we discuss what that looks like for all of that different types of retail, but beyond that also, what impact does that have on the people that use those services and buy those services and goods? So my hope, what we're hoping to achieve, or certainly what I'm hoping to gain tonight, would be a really clear understanding and acknowledgement of what the changing role the city's retailers and the supporting sectors that sort of feed into that are facing. How are they evolving and adapting to that change? But also, what else needs to happen, and what else can we identify that needs changing in the city to ultimately contribute to those businesses continuing to thrive? That's probably it from me, if I'm honest. I'll hand you back to Linda, who can then obviously introduce the panelists.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and welcome again to Exeter City Futures. Before we head into panel, we are going to perform a little poll. We're going to use some polls throughout the event, so this is just to help you get used to it, but also just to help us understand as well, and help you all understand who is in the audience tonight. So, James, I believe you have the poll.
Yep.
Everybody should see it pop up in front of them. Just let us know if it doesn't.
There you go. It should just pop up now.
I can see that, so I'm hoping everyone else can. It says, what type of retailer or organisation are you representing today? There is a list there: brick and mortar, online, independent, chain, department store, warehouse, retail, or business support, public sector, other. If you want to explain, if you tick other, and you want to explain a little bit further, please use the chat and pop your answer. Obviously tick the box other and then put your answer in chat. That would be great.
About 10 more to go, I think.
Lovely, thank you. Right, so when those answers, when everyone's submitted their response, James will do a quick magic trick and show us what the responses were.
Yeah, we've just got 6 more people. Has anyone got an additional question they want to put in? Just leave it a couple more seconds and then we'll end it there. Brilliant. I'll just share that with everyone. 58% selected for other.
So hopefully we'll get some understanding of what that is in the chat. But we can see my maths, and I'll be really quick. 24 quarter plus a quarter of us. So about a quarter of the audience are retailers. 6% work in business support. And just over a fifth of us are public sector. Okay, thank you very much. Now I have, we'll use another poll later as well, both that platform, but we've also got a doodle poll coming up later. Now the really exciting thing, I get to introduce a brilliant panel for you tonight, so I'm really, really pleased to welcome a really good broad mix of people who can add some great voices to this discussion. First of all, can I introduce Councillor Philip Bialik, leader of Exeter City Council. Phil, if you could give us a wave. There he is. Good evening, Phil. Kalkadan, good evening. Kalkadan is creative director at Sancho's. Sustainable fashion on 4th Street. Good evening, Kalkadan. Seb Blevings, who's branch manager at John Lewis here in Exeter. He's not popping up for me, but it's good evening. Hi, Seb, I know you're there. Yvonne Williams, who's director at Exeter Chamber of Commerce. He's also the owner of the Odd Fellows. Oh, there's Seb. Evening, Seb. Hey there. Yvonne. Hi. Yvonne Williams is Director of Exeter Chamber of Commerce and owner at the Odd Fellows. You've got 2 hats tonight, Yvonne. Welcome to you. Dan Taylor, who's owner of Grocer on the Green on Magdalen Road. Hi, Dan. Good way, lovely. And Andrew, who we've already met, who is the former Regional Stores Director of Tesco and new MD for Exeter City Futures. Michelle Menezes, who's the Centre Manager for Princess Hay Shopping Centre. Oh, there's Andrew. Good evening, Andrew. Michelle, who's Centre Manager for Princess Hay Shopping Centre. Hey, Michelle. Hi there. Good evening. Don't worry. And Councillor Andrew Ledbetter, who's the Cabinet Manager for Adult Social Care and Health Services.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's late in the day at 6 o'clock after a very long day for everybody, so do appreciate this. Phil, if you don't mind me coming to you first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, no problem.
Because I think what'll be really handy, I mean, you might have another view, but I think what'll be really handy, Phil, is to kind of help paint the picture of net zero and where that is in the city, and how that might kind of sit along this changing role that we're seeing with more people working at home and using walking and cycling more, and changing online sales and things like that for retail.
Well, I think the good thing, if there's anything good to come out of COVID, is we've all had a taste of what our city would look like without traffic and lots of carbon being punched into the air. So we've got a little glimpse of what 2030 could be like. But of course, that's not sustainable in that way. I mean, the strengths of our city centre, you know, Exeter is a large catchment area population. It's relatively affluent. There is a demand for quality. Retail office space remains strong. We've got strong, diverse employment. It's a popular destination still for tourists. It's a growing resident population in the city centre, in particular for 20 to 29-year-olds. It supports a vibrant arts and cultural scene. College and university students help drive the vitality and viability of our city centre. But of course, we have got some weaknesses that we've got to recognise. We've got rising retail vacancies rates at the moment, including large prominent units. There's a shortage of available office space. Our buildings are somewhat tired, and public realm in secondary shopping areas are tired as well. And we've got pockets of deprivation in the city centre residential areas, poor congestion and air quality along main roads. So absence of major cultural hub is another issue, and we've got limited levels of residential development in recent years. So the City Council has a plan. As you know, it's for those of you who go into the Exeter area, if you venture down Paris Street, you'll see the new leisure centre rising out of the ground, and it's going to be quite an important views. And those who were against it, I think, can now understand it's going to be an important anchor for our city. A new bus station coming, and we'll be bringing proposals forward in due course for the redevelopment of the rest of the bus station site. So public realm, how we improve our city centre, how we keep it a destination is so important. So what I want to achieve out of today is obviously to listen to people, get the feedback on how we can all work together for a sustainable future, and to maintain Exeter where we were and where I still think we still can be amongst the top cities in the country, a great place to be, and carry on with our place-based initiatives here in Exeter. So that's my sort of intro, as I would put it, Linda.
Sorry, I'm muted. I think that's because we just had a bit of feedback. So if everybody just could keep their microphone on mute just as the panel's talking, that would be great. And when we ask you to speak, if you just unmute it, that'd be fantastic. Thanks very much. Phil, that's an interesting point as well in there about Exeter as a destination. I'd like to come to Michelle next, actually, because I know, Michelle, that you were talking about retail in that sense, in terms of its being linked to tourism and use of spaces, and it becoming much more of a experience or experiential focus for retail in terms of how it thrives.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as we've all said and we all know, retail's evolving, and it's not just enough now to open your doors. You've got to have a unique selling point, and you've got to have a reason why people want to come to Exeter and to your store or your centre, rather than the one down the road, because there are bigger and probably ones that are slightly more evolved. And I think it's really important to find that emotive connection with consumers or customers. Because once you build that, that's how you then build the loyalty, so they'll always choose to come back to you rather than to somebody else. And I think we need to look at the way that we use our outdoor spaces, because it's not as simple anymore as just to put on a big event, because then you're encouraging mass gatherings. So it's how we create that atmosphere, that energy in the centre, but in a C19 friendly way, I suppose, so that everyone still feels very safe. And also things still appear to be very clean, because obviously they're two really important things to members of the public. And I think they have to be a given for people to even consider coming to whatever activity there is.
Yeah, that must be quite a challenge, looking at retail becoming more of an experience than a transaction, particularly at the moment. Can you just help people understand what it's like for those retailers that opened up this week?
I think it's difficult now in multiple ways, but if you think of the traditional customer service that prior to C19, a lot of retailers were trying to do, so it's that one-to-one, very personable, and in terms of literal distance, very close. It's very difficult to have to rethink how you can create that relationship, that instant connection with the customer, when you have to be such a distance away. And then obviously you've got the added difficulties, specifically I suppose for independents, where they might have a regular lunchtime trade, but with 25 to 30% of offices now expected to be working multiple days from home by the end of next year. How do they capture or make up for that trade? If they're only allowed 2 people within their store at any one time, lunch breaks aren't going to extend in the window. They're not going to be able to trade until 10 o'clock at night. People won't shop. So how do they combat that? What's the answer? So I think there's loads of things that need to be thought about and developed to make sure that we're all successful as a city and as individuals post C19.
Thanks, Michelle. Seb, can I come to you? Seb Bleving, Centre Manager for John Lewis here in Exeter. Hi, Seb.
Hi.
John Lewis, we were talking as well the other day about the trials and tribulations and more people working at home and how they might use office space is a consideration for John Lewis. Could you just explain a little bit more about that? And also, I'd like to explore as well that idea of community as well in John Lewis as well, and how that's important.
Yeah, sure. And I wonder if it's useful to think about retail post-COVID, although we all say nothing will be the same again. If we focus probably too much on the constraints that are in place now, it's hard to see some retailers surviving, particularly clothing retail with fitting rooms closed and embargoed clothing, etc. But if we're to look at beyond and be optimistic, I think we've got to remember that retail was in some sort of trouble before this. I think post-COVID, it's the same issues, just with more urgency. So I completely agree with what's been said about you need to have a unique selling point, but assuming that people do want your goods or your services, many retailers were already thinking about what else can they do beyond that product or that service, whether it's and we're a big believer at John Lewis or I certainly am, in trying to be a bigger part in the community, whether it's embracing local clubs or minority interests or feeling part of the community, rather than just expecting people to come in and take a product off the shelf. Because one thing we've got to face into post-COVID is customers are going to be less forgiving than they ever have been about anything that doesn't make their shopping experience easy and pleasant, if they're going to go to the trouble of going into the middle of Exeter. We have people who have resisted online shopping for years, and it's easy to assume that might be older customers, but all sorts of customers have resisted online shopping for years until now, and so many have succumbed. You only have to walk the streets around here and it looks like an episode of Black Mirror, with Amazon Prime vans going up and down the street, left, right and centre. So if someone is going to leave their sofa to come into your shop and to make the trouble of getting on a bus or paying the car park fees, it's got to be compelling. And it's not just the product, they've got to buy in, that old adage of, they don't just buy what you sell, they buy what you stand for. And I'm sure, you know, Sancho's and others would agree with that. That becomes all more important, because we can't perhaps rely on the office workers, maybe the volume of students, or the people that had to be in the city centre. People are going to have to make a concerted effort. So yeah, the theatrics, the experiential, whatever you want to call it, is important. But the last thing I'd say is the drama of an event, and we've done plenty in John Lewis that catch a headline, are great, but they don't keep a business in business. The BAU of the basics of, is it easy to shop? Are the toilets available and clean? Are lifts and escalators working? Is signage good? Is ticketing good? Those things sound very dull, but in a post-COVID world, retail world, customers will be less forgiving. If it feels frustrating, they will not come back. Sorry, is that helpful at all? I'm not sure if that even answered your question, but had to get it off my chest.
No, it's really, really helpful actually, Seb, and it helps me think that I should really now speak to Calcadan from Sancho's, particularly as you so nicely referenced it, so thank you very much, Seb. Calcadan, Seb mentioned there about how you guys would recognise the importance of engaging with your clients, your customers, and bring them into your space. Can you just share a little bit about your story about what how you know that's important to Sancho's?
Of course, I think that it's not something that's unique to Sancho's as such, but it's a way in which independent businesses like maintain competitivity and relevancy against much larger, you know, businesses that have much, you know, greater pools of resources. And so we've spent 5 years building those relationships with our customers, and they're very personal relationships with myself and my partner and our team. And I don't think they're very easy to kind of replicate. And you know, I think anyone who knows Sancho's will know we've been doing it through kind of a multitude of methods over the years. But in the past few weeks, especially, I think what's been really helpful is communicating very clearly to people our experiences and the journey that we've been on. Like, you know, we've been doing local deliveries almost daily when we first started, cycling up to 25 miles a day in the city to compete with those Amazon, you know, vans going around making their own deliveries. I do have quite a lot I'd like to say about what would be helpful for independent businesses. And I don't know if now is the appropriate time.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please do add your thoughts, actually, Calcadan. And may I say as well for the panel, if at any point there is something you want to add, please just raise your hand, or using the Zoom little button about raising your hands in the reactions, and I will come to you. But yes, please do, Calcadan, that'd be really good.
Thank you. So I think to kind of give it context, before coronavirus, we were generating above kind of 90% of our sales in store. in comparison to online, and now we have managed to make up, you know, over 100% of our sales with our kind of e-commerce and online strategy. And I think the key thing for us that we've identified as our market isn't just the immediate customers around us in Exeter, but it's how we can tell our story in a way that's relevant for potential customers all around the UK. And the support that we need from the city is to enable us to both meet our customers here in Exeter, but also continue to grow so that we can continue to reach, you know, customers outside of the city. So what that will mean for us, just to begin with, is, you know, there's been quite a lot of conversation around how we fulfill local delivery. So I think one important distinction to make between independent businesses and larger retailers is, you know, the kind of logistics of having people in store isn't really our main challenge. Our main challenge is how quickly we can serve as many customers as possible. If we could do that online, we could do that quickly, you know, obviously that helps us grow. We'd like to see more support for the local fulfillment companies that are doing fulfillment, especially by bike in the city. I think there's been some talk about it being something that individual businesses like engage with themselves, but I think there's going to be a lot of value for the city to help develop a delivery infrastructure that businesses can tap into as and when they need it. You know, I think, you know, it's been echoed earlier, but people are looking for, you know, meaningful reasons to come into town, but those, in order to create those reasons, we're going to have to spend a lot of money and put in a lot of energy, whereas if we just let people shop from home and just fulfilled their orders in a much more convenient way, we wouldn't need to spend that money. We think it would be a more profitable strategy for Sancho's and also other independent businesses in the city. So that's, you know, that's the support that we'd really like to see. In terms of then addressing the experience of shoppers in the city, we'd like to see just continued and improved investment into, you know, the experience of coming into town. Like I'm sat on my street now, and I can see 4th Street just needs some TLC. It needs some planters, some bike parking areas. It needs to be more attractive to be in. I think the scope to which that could be actually addressed is quite vast, and I would love to see the council take a radical, positive, forward-thinking approach to how it designs the city. But there are some, you know, low-hanging fruit that could be accomplished with a little bit of investment. I think that extends to some of the homelessness, alcoholism and drug use in the city as well. You know, there's a lot of problems that we have, particularly around the Cathedral Green and right at the top of 4th Street on the kind of the Market Street junction. And, you know, the people there, they need support, and they need the council to recognise their needs, and our businesses need the investment to be made. There was some mention earlier about diversity in the city. I think looking forward to what the city could be, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, I would love to see a much more concerted effort in it being an inclusive space, so that more students, particularly students from diverse backgrounds, could be encouraged to stay here. I think if you look at entrepreneurship and innovation and how it's disproportionately coming from, you know, female students, students from diverse backgrounds in the city, there's a lot of gain that we could have if we made it a safer, more inclusive space for people of more backgrounds. Yeah, and I think just to add on to this list now, there is obviously still a waste management problem on 4th Street. Like, I know that the councillors on the talk today, on the panel chat today, can help address these issues. There's still seagulls ripping through bags once a week. There's, you know, stains from food waste on the streets. All of, you know, we were saying earlier that if online shoppers have to go out of their way to come into town, they're going to expect a high level of service. We can only be responsible for the service that they experience within our doors, but what we'd like to see is that their whole experience of coming into the city is positive, clean, green, you know, safe, clean, all of those things. So I could go on, but, you know, I can see everybody's probably ready to hear from somebody else now. But, you know, those are the things I'd really like to see in the city.
Thanks, Kakada, and don't worry, we will come back to you as well, and to other panel members later in the session for your reflections on what takes place and what's said throughout the roundtables too. So there will be another opportunity if we don't get some more time now. But it's really interesting hearing what people are saying about how the city needs to work collaboratively. Really, this isn't just sitting on one doorstep to help to make sure that one business, that one retailer does well and does thrive. But it sounds like a clear message about how we work together as a city too, in order to support retail's change direction, to pivot, to talk about deliveries as well. So that's really good. Dan, if I can come to you just on that point, actually, Dan Taylor, Grocer on the Green. Good evening. Because I know your story over the last few weeks has involved you changing the way you run your business, and we've been talking here tonight about online sales. Can you say a little bit more about the evolution of Grocer on the Green in the last few weeks, please?
Yeah. Hi everybody. It's quite evolved quite drastically from having I guess it's quite interesting to sort of see, I guess, a large retailer like the John Lewis here, and then I guess the complete opposite of being a much smaller retailer like myself along Magdalen Road, where I've just been sort of, I guess, having all the shoppers around Magdalen Road and around Exeter coming in, doing all their local shopping each week. And then this has hit quite drastically. And I think on the 21st of March, on the Saturday, after I think we probably did about 4 times what we would normally do on our busiest Saturday in that shop. And looking outside my store at one point and seeing, I think, about 15 to 20 people queuing outside still wanting to get in, realizing that this was clearly not going to be manageable. I think after a good cry that evening, realizing that it just wasn't going to carry on like that. And I just immediately made the decision that evening that I was going to close the shop because I just needed to keep myself and everyone safe, really. Being an asthmatic myself, and one of my sons, the youngest, having a undiagnosed respiratory issue at the moment, I needed to sort of just make that decision and at least make that part out the way first, and then just try and worry about how I was actually going to carry on operating. Luckily, one of my customers, who's a very good friend lately these days, knew someone down at St. Leonard's Church. They immediately got in touch and just said, look, we're not using the community hall down there, so we'd love you to use it for as long as you need, because you're doing a great job for the community and you need to keep going. So that's where I've been for the last 12, 13 weeks now. And it's all done via either a phone call or an email. I have had the occasional message popping up through Facebook or Twitter, etc. But it's been, I guess, in too many different areas coming through. So I've had to streamline it all just to phone calls and emails at the moment. And we've got through the bumpy part of it now, really. And I guess it's, we've gotten used to the bumps, really, in all this. So it's just a lot easier now. A lot less tears each evening anyway.
That's really interesting to see how you've evolved your business. I mean, we're looking this evening as well about kind of the immediate effects. Can you comment on what the future of Grocer on the Green might look like in terms of how you might operate? I know you said you're going to maintain your phone calls and your orders on via email. Can you see what Grocer on the Green might look like in the future?
Now, if you told me you were going to ask me that one, Linda, because I've left my crystal ball at home. Really realistic at the moment, I don't really know. But what I just did actually over this weekend just gone is I've sent out a link to all my email customers that I have, and I've asked them to take part in a quick doodle poll, and just to say that I guess based on the current restrictions that are all still in place and the guidelines we need to follow, if I was to look at opening the shop sort of now, then how would they all feel either wanting to come back to the shop or stick with the deliveries? And so far, out of, I think I've had about 80% of my customers take part in the poll. And out of those customers, 80% of them said that they would continue with the deliveries.
Great. Well, that's really good to get that feedback. And I think it's really important as well to take from that as well, Dan, that we don't have a crystal ball and we've not been in this situation before at all either. So I'm sorry for putting you on the spot there, but it's quite interesting to see, you know, the challenge that's still in front of us as retail. Ivan, I just want to pick up a couple of points that Dan made actually with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
I know that Exeter Chamber of Commerce. Oh, there he is. Hi, Ivan. Good evening. I know Exeter Chamber of Commerce have just ran a business survey, and I think the results are going to be published in the next few days or early next week. But has that given you some insight as to what retailers are thinking in the city as well?
So the survey that Exeter Chamber have just carried out with Exeter City Council as well is looking at how many offices or establishments are going to bring their staff back into the workplace. We haven't had the results yet. We've had a good response, but we think that there's going to be a lot of offices that aren't going to be occupied for the foreseeable future. It's just realising how things can work differently, and until I think we get further along with what we know about COVID-19, office spaces, offices, they're not gonna risk sending their staff back to work with a risk of infection.
Mm.
Which that then straight away reduces the number of people in the city, especially using sort of like the food cafe bar retailers, and also just literally the lunchtime spend of going into town and, you know, it's just got hit payday. I'm going to go into town and buy some stuff because I've just got paid. There won't be that lunchtime spending. So it's how do we look at bringing more people to the city for different things, which then will entice them to spend money within the city.
And how are you looking upon it through the Oddfellows eyes?
I think the same as Dan. It's like how many times? Well, we haven't tried that many times, but we've had probably a few disagreements between myself and Faye of what the hell we're going to do. Alcohol and distancing doesn't go very well hand in hand. I think a lot of us know that when we've had a drink, we all get a bit more cuddly. So it's, and also we're waiting for the government to actually announce definitely are we opening from the 4th of July. I think we're all planning something ourselves. The city does go quieter for us in the summer due to reduced number of students, but also if the sun's out, then you're going to go to Exmouth Beach. So we're not even sure if we're going to reopen on the 4th of July or whether we're sort of like going to hit September and reopen in September. Yeah. So yeah, it's sort of like watch this space to what the government decide to announce on restrictions, social distancing, and to how the public reacts to the city reopening, which comes down to the number of people walking through everyone's doors.
Lovely, thanks, Ivan. Is there anything else that the Chamber would want to kind of add to the conversation at this point?
I just think the Chamber, it's a new Chamber. There's a lot of new directors, board directors, variety of different fields that they've picked and chosen people from different areas. There's quite a few Chamber board directors on the call tonight. It's us bringing something different to members and non-members through the lockdown Fridays, information points, and it's just what we want to do is give people some confidence in what they're doing, whether it's an information point and whether it's joining these webinars. So it's about the Chamber supporting the businesses within the city and the Greater of Exeter, as well as working within Exeter, yourselves, the council, and just trying to bring everything together.
Lovely, thank you. I'm just going to conclude just with the reflections from Councillor Andrew Ledbetter, and then go to Simon if we can, just for final words, Simon. Andrew, if I may ask, I've noticed, I've picked up on a couple of points been made about obviously the health side of things that the pandemic has brought, the health points that retailers have to consider with social distancing, and also the health and well-being of their customers and the customer base. What sort of points would you like to bring out from that?
Well, I'm going to start with as an optimist, because I think I don't necessarily think our high street is dying. I think it's in a state of transition. I think that's the case with many high streets. I think the core element is very much alive. We've got excellent shops in Exeter, and we've got excellent niche shops as well. Places like Gandhi Street and 4th Street and on the edges of the city. So I think there's a lot to celebrate in Exeter, which we're very lucky for. And I have to say that I am very much an in-person shopper. I'm proud to say I've never ever bought anything from Amazon in my life. I wouldn't know how many people could say that. So I very much enjoy the experience of going and actually doing shopping. So it's great to hear what people are saying. I think the good points have been made, which come back to good health and mental health, is you need a safe city centre, a clean city centre, and a green city centre, which will encourage people to come in, and that they're not going to be going out of town to do other things. So you need a good mix, and we want to encourage people to come into, as I say, our clean and safe city, which will improve people's health with a mix of leisure, retail, and other things to do. And it would be great if we could encourage shops to, I know we've tried this before, but to open later some evenings to try and get things going. And I do wonder whether shops need to open so early. Majority of people being at work from 9 o'clock. I just wonder if we can change things around and mix things up. I think we also need to look at business rates. I know a lot of smaller shops are probably exempt, but that is one thing that often comes up, the cost of business rates. I'm interested to see what Simon Jupp says about that, or MP, because that is something that the government, I think, is going to look at. And obviously business rates is a great disincentive to many people. And the other thing is, and we've got to mention this, obviously a lot of talk about green and getting rid of cars, but if people go shopping and they do a lot of shopping, they need to carry their goods back somehow. So I think it's an interesting square we have to circle. Yes, by all means, limit cars, but people do need to drive into the city to go shopping. And that's something we shouldn't just brush under the carpet. So I think lots of positives. As I say, I think the city is transitioning, and it's how we get it transitioned to what we want. There's some great ideas about the farmers market. I think it's a brilliant idea. Let's find an area to put that. I always thought the square next to Exeter Library would make a great location. It's a dead space there. So yeah, lots of positives. I look forward to hearing many, many, many more good ideas.
Lovely, thank you, Andrea. And it's great that we've got such an entrepreneurial spirit in the city, and not only through the student base as well. But yeah, absolutely. And it'd be good to be able to.
Yeah. So lots of people don't.
Sorry,
I don't shop online. Very little shopping online. So that, a lot of people do actually want to go shopping.
Yeah, and then that also ties into the experience of it, and we've obviously been talking tonight as well about how that ties in with tourism and culture, and lifts it up into other conversations as well, across transport and travel and deliveries and student and office space and all sorts of things. So it's obviously a clearly complex situation, or the picture that we've got to evolve from. But it's very heartening to feel that it's much more of a positive view there.
I think so. And also, we also mentioned living in the city centre as well. People coming back in to live in the centre. At one time, everybody wanted to get out, but I think again we must encourage people to come and live in our centres, and then they will be alive. Very much a continental way of living.
Yeah, it's part of the changing role of the city. It's part of the changing role of the city, I think. If I could come to Simon, just for final words, final reflections on the panel discussion, what we've heard this evening. Simon, one second, please. Then we'll move into the roundtable discussions.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me this evening. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for all the debate because we had a vote in Parliament, and I'm currently in Parliament despite the wonderful view of Sidmouth behind me. Sadly, I'm in a Westminster cubbyhole. I think we're very lucky in Exeter, having a very resilient economy in comparison to other parts of the southwest. And for example, I've been really impressed with the Stronger Together campaign from Exeter Chamber, because we've got to encourage everyone to think local first on everything they shop and do, to support our local shops and to ultimately protect jobs and livelihoods. Now, I think it's already been touched on quite a lot by the panel and the comments I've caught so far, that we've all become quite accustomed to clicking a mouse. We are already a regional shopping destination, but can we improve the experience and flexibility is the question I would pose. More late night shopping opportunities, Andrew mentioned this, perhaps with themed food stalls. I was delighted to hear someone talk about, for example, a farmer's market, which I think is a fantastic way of actually encouraging more people. But also, could they be late night themes too? That could present an opportunity. Now, I'm aware that 30% of retailers in Exeter open their doors this week. That's a really good start. But social distancing remains a significant challenge for all of you. And I absolutely understand the clamor for clarity when it comes to government regulations. And that is coming. I promise you it's coming. Because at the moment, it's a real challenge. 2 meters is a significant challenge. I support going down to 1 meter to help more stores open, reopen with confidence. But we've also got other challenges too. So public transport, for example, we all aim to improve the air quality in our city. But going down from social distancing of 2 meters to 1 meter only gets one more person on a single decker bus. That's just a fact. And it's something I've explored as a member of the Transport Select Committee, and it presents a significant challenge. So we've got to be business friendly in order to stay consumer friendly. And so I've heard people talk about the ideas of reducing traffic through the city and reducing car usage, for example. And though I can absolutely understand how that would be aesthetically pleasing and would improve the air that we breathe, we've also got to think about the fact that we need to encourage people to come back and be able to put any barriers in their way, because that could put off consumers and new businesses and actually new people to live in our city just when we need them most. And I do appreciate the call to review business rates, but I do on some caution too, just to say that obviously that would affect the income of Exeter City Council, who have already been impacted quite significantly by the recent pandemic. So I'm really intrigued to hear what more people have to say this evening. I'm obviously, if you're in the East Devon part of the constituency and you run a business, I'd really welcome a conversation with you about how you're finding the guidelines when they come out and what your challenges are, because I'm here to help. And there's a simple way of finding out if I'm your MP, because I know it's tag confusing. It's whoisyourmp.com. Type in your postcode, and if I pop up, it's me. So thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I look forward to the rest of the discussion, but I'm aware they've got another vote in about 3 to 5 minutes time. So I will disappear, but I will be back again.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Simon. And thanks for a little plug there. How to get hold of you. Thank you very much. I think it's been really interesting to hear from the panel, and I'll try and understand a little bit more about how the city might change. We've talked about students' population, we've talked about people working from home more, we've found out about online sales increasing, the rise and importance of communities and the experience of shopping as well, and many, many more. So thank you very much. Hold down your minds, folks, as we move into the round tables. But before we do, I just want to find out from you your confidence levels, really, about and how you think, in terms of how you think the Exeter's retail sector can now reopen and thrive. We're going to run another poll. So, James, if you're ready to release that, that'd be great.
There you go. It should be on the screens now.
Lovely, thank you very much. So the question now is, how confident are you that Exeter's retail sector can reopen and thrive? Select one of those options, please. Again, if it's other, please tick the box and drop your reason for other into the chat. And as you're doing that, I'm just going through the chat as well, just to see, have a review some of the comments that are coming in, and it's here. I see the comments here about the air quality and the health, and Exeter being a vibrant and healthy city to live and work in. People walking a lot more. And market day has been picked up as well. So that's really, really interesting. Looking at the different view, the different way in which retail might operate in the future is really interesting as part of this discussion. James, how are we doing on responses to the poll?
Yep, we've got just 3 more to get in, but let's give it a couple more seconds and then we'll close it, I think.
Lovely, thank you.
There we go, and I'll share that with everyone, so you should hopefully see that on your screens now.
That's great. So nearly 50% are slightly confident, and 13% are not confident at all. So in my good old days of looking at statistics, I would lump those together, but I'd also lump confident and very confident. So 35% of the people here today are confident that Exeter's retail sector is ready, can reopen and thrive as well here. That's great. We're going to now split you into breakout rooms where you'll get a chance to discuss what you've heard in more detail, but also as well think about that in the context of your own organisation and your own business, and also have a look at what type of initiatives could come out of this, and those that you'd like the city to explore. What happens next is that Kerry will help put us into breakout rooms. That will involve a couple of minutes, so please do bear with us. Initially you might find yourself with 2 facilitators in the room with you, so again, bear with us while we sort it out and make sure each room has a facilitator. If you're ready to go then, Kerry, that'd be great. I'll just remind the facilitators, please do press record on your on the record button when you get into the room, and a reminder to everybody else that we will be recording. The facilitators will be making notes in a Google Doc as they talk, so those notes will come back to us and we'll include them in the report. And for anybody who doesn't get an opportunity or feels like they want to be able to say more, we'll share another way for you to do that after your discussion as well. So please don't feel that you've not got any further opportunities after the discussion today.